These little insects are Apis mellifera, also known as the European honeybee. These creatures spend their days making the superorganism that is their colony work. The queen lays the eggs to produce more honeybees. The male drones mate with queen honeybees from other colonies, and the female worker bees do, well, everything else. They regulate the temperature of the hive. They care for and feed their fellow hive mates and brood. They create wax and propolis to build comb. They forage for food, water, make honey, and most importantly, they pollinate. In the United States, the European honeybee is the most common pollinator. It is so common and important, in fact, that 1/3 of the human diet can be traced back to honeybees, and 16% of flowering species worldwide are pollinated via honeybee. Of course, along with honeybees comes beekeeping. The European honeybee was first introduced to the United States in the 1600s, but the history of beekeeping goes back much farther than that. The earliest evidence of beekeeping is from rock paintings that date back to 13,000 BCE. Today, the modern beekeeper works with their bees to ensure their best survival and production. Beekeepers provide their bees with their hive and then monitor that hive for the health of the bees. Beekeepers might insulate and feed their bees to make sure they survive the winter, increase or decrease the space that bees have based on their needs, monitor for disease and parasites, and more. Beekeepers might create new or merge together existing hives, and, of course, many beekeepers harvest honey. As common as honeybees are, they often seem to be left out of the conversation of animal ethics. So, then, where should honeybees exist in the philosophical conversation of animal ethics and rights? Tom Regan was a philosopher and animal rights advocate. In his 1983 book, The Case for Animal Rights, Regan writes that all experiencing subjects of life have equal inherent value, and this inherent value allows them rights, and it would be morally wrong to act against those rights. According to Regan's writing, honeybees too have inherent value.
Like certain things, like if bees don't pollinate properly, and it wasn't just honeybees, it was like lots of different types, but like it showed like all of the insects that would be wiped out because of all of these plants that would be wiped out, because and then like a chain reaction, and basically it was like humans can't live without bees. So I think it's really high up there, like with water and sun. And I would like to say that they're just as important as humans, as all living things are, including plants, but probably not as important as humans.
In his book, How to Count Animals, the philosopher Shelley Kagan discusses moral theories in regard to animals. Kagan suggests that the moral importance of creatures is determined by where they land on a hierarchy of intelligence. In his hierarchy, humans sit at the top and insects at the bottom. However, considering how highly organized honeybees are, is their intelligence really that low?
I think depends on the type of intelligence. Because they all work together. I think they have like an altruistic self. I wouldn't say they have a sense of self, but yeah, I would say genetically they are intelligent because they communicate through dance and different hormones. I can never sit and communicate with someone without talking the rest of my life. So yeah.
Do they truly belong at the bottom of the moral hierarchy?
I would say when it comes to Emotional intelligence, yes, because they can replace each other so easily. However, when it comes to just intelligence, whereas like genetic intelligence, I guess I want to call it that, for the size of their brain, which is extremely small, so size comparison, and the communication they do, I would say, I understand that scale. I wouldn't use that scale for honeybees. It's like asking a fish to climb a tree.
And what about humanity's moral obligation to honeybees and honeybee rights?
I think they should. Don't think they do, but I think they should. Why?
I think they should be protected under the law on certain things, especially if they were at some point on the endangered list. I remember, and I'm older, so in middle school or high school, maybe even the early years of college, you could get a fine for killing bees at the time, because they were really worried like a certain type of bee would go extinct. I think humans in general have a moral obligation to all living things, just like in the circle of life, or some people's perspective of the circle of reincarnation. Anything that's deemed lower than us, we should have like a protective right over. We shouldn't just use all of our natural resources, or anything like that, including bees. So I would say that they have an intrinsic right to protect them. Does that actually happen, or are we doing it well, is a different matter, but I think we should be, if that makes sense.
I think that their rights should be paying people to care for these honeybees, because as I said, without honeybees, everything from the air you breathe to the water system being polluted and pollutants taken out of it through plants, different root systems, and even the cost of your groceries, it will change all of these things, and without them it's for the negative, well, except for the cost of your groceries, that'll go up. But I think we should be paying people to house these honeybees and not.
And what do people think about beekeeping?
I don't have a problem with beekeeping, because I think people that tend to keep bees are normally more knowledgeable on the subject, and so therefore, even though you're, I don't want to say training, but like working with bees and using them, I think they tend to be more knowledgeable. Generally speaking, to like people that train dogs or work with kids more than the average Joe tend to have more knowledge of those things and are more careful with those. Not all parents or people that work with children, but generally speaking, just like I have more knowledge in college settings and higher education because I work here. Same thing with people that in beekeeping, they would generally speaking have more knowledge and know how not to hurt them, how to find the queen, move hives around, things like that. So I don't have any problems with beekeeping, and I think it's a very important skill as well as hobby. I think more people should learn how to do it.
I think you have to treat them well, or you have to try. If you don't treat them well and you're not maintaining and doing your job, or you're killing too many without noticing, or something's going wrong, they simply can't stay, because the queen will leave if things aren't going well, and they're gonna swarm. You don't have a choice, you gotta be nice to them.
And finally, what do I think? I think the idea of placing animals on a hierarchy and basing their moral importance off of that hierarchy is not practical in reality. Case in point being the honeybee. I think there will always be exceptions to where things have been placed on that hierarchy. Insects are placed at the bottom of the hierarchy, and yet just the intelligence of the honeybee's organization alone, in my opinion, would place them much higher than that. honeybees are an entire superorganism, and the way that each honeybee works independently and makes his own decisions, whilst also working cohesively with the rest of the colony for colony survival and colony functions, is incredibly impressive and absolutely warrants them a higher spot than the bottom. I agree with Reagan that animals have inherent value, that everything almost has inherent value, though I don't think it's necessarily equal. And I don't think my definition of inherent value would be the same as his. I don't think just because something is living, it has inherent value. I think inherent value and how much inherent value something has is more so based on what positive impact that thing has on the natural world. So I think trees have an inherent value because of the oxygen that they produce. I think fungi have an inherent value because of the decomposing that they do. I think water systems have an inherent value because of the water they produce to life and the habitats they create. And certainly honeybees have important value, even if you're just measuring on the pollination that they do alone and how important that is. A world without honeybees would be a far less green world. So inherent value is absolutely there. I just think the definition is different. And I think morals, moral importance, and animal rights should be based on that. I think humans have a moral obligation to protect every living thing in every piece of this natural world. If humans have impacted the natural living thing or unliving thing, they have a moral obligation to fix and protect it. We have a moral obligation to not shrink habitats. We have a moral obligation to make sure species numbers don't drop too low, and that includes honeybees. And I think honeybees should have rights. Pollination and pollinator species are dropping, and they can't drop too low. A world without honeybees and bees and pollinators is one where agriculture and plants are far more scarce and hard to do. It's a world where you're self-pollinating, manually pollinating every bud and every flower, a blossom on a tree, a plant. It's incredibly time-consuming, expensive, and hard. And it is unnecessary if you have honeybees and pollinator species. So I think honeybees do need to be protected with rights. I don't think that they currently are, but I think that they should.